Sarah, did you get engaged? Congratulations. Thanks. We haven't decided on the wedding details yet, but will you come? Of course. I was happy that you attended mine, so I'd love to be there for yours this time. I was thrilled when my best friend was so happy about my engagement. I've always dreamed of a wedding and never thought such a thing could happen. My name is Sarah. I'm a 27-year-old office worker, engaged to my boyfriend, Tom. He proposed just the other day. On our 3rd anniversary, during dinner, he surprised me with a proposal. Since I always thought he was the one I'd marry, and we had started discussing it, so I said yes, without any hesitation. How about we go check out some wedding venues soon? A while after the proposal, Tom suggested this to me. I've always been fascinated by weddings. My best friend had the beautiful wedding last year, making me determined to have one too. Although many opt out of weddings these days, everyone around me had one, and I've always wanted to wear a wedding dress once. Tom knew this, so he brought it up. However, I don't want a lavish ceremony. I don't want to rely on parental support, preferring a wedding within our budget. After sharing these thoughts with Tom, he agreed, and we narrowed down our options based on budget and location. On our next day off, we went venue hunting and I instantly fell in love with one chapel and reception hall. It looked affordable, and with Tom's agreement, we decided on that hotel venue. After telling our parents over the phone, they said it's our decision and seemed supportive. But then, the problem arose. The next day, while at Tom's place, his phone rang. It's from Dad. As he answered, I could hear the sound of shouting from the other end. How dare you decide on such a venue without consulting us? I've visited his family home a few times. His father seems to care a lot about appearances. I knew this, but I never expected such an outburst over our wedding plans. Tom's voice was getting increasingly irritated on the phone. It's our wedding, for crying out loud. We're paying for it ourselves, you don't have a say in this. Tom was saying this, but his father didn't seem to be listening and was still shouting. All right, I'll come over next week, and we can talk then. Tom said with a sigh, sounding annoyed, but the shouting was still audible on the phone. Both of you should come. Got it? Tom seemed surprised, apparently planning to go alone. But I heard it too and nodded affirmatively at him. He looked apologetic as he hung up the phone. Okay, next week then. After hanging up, he turned to me, almost as if he was about to kneel in apology. I'm so sorry. Really sorry. Dad's always like this, wanting everything his way. He's showy, probably wants a bigger wedding. But I swear, I'll convince him. I won't let this trouble you, Sarah. It's okay, I'll help convince him too. After all, I was the one who insisted on this venue. That's not true. I liked it too. The food was great. Let's definitely have our ceremony there. Tom promised me with determination. The following week, I went with Tom to his parents' house. Mother-in-law greeted us as we arrived. Sarah, thanks so much for coming, sorry for the trouble. She is kind, always nice to me. To me, they seemed like a couple from an old TV show, a stubborn husband and a supportive wife. I can talk to mother-in-law, but honestly, I'm not comfortable around father-in-law. But since Tom said he would handle it, and we needed to talk, I sat down with a bit of courage in front of his dad. Skipping the pleasantries, we got right to the point. We've decided to have our wedding here. Look at this, please. We visited the venue, and it was really nice. We even had a tasting for the reception food, and every dish was delicious. I think you'll like it. Tom said, pulling out the venue's brochure and presenting it to his dad like he was a salesperson. Oh, isn't that a lovely place? Mother-in-law said, looking at the brochure, but father-in-law remained silent with a scowl on his face. After Tom finished his pitch, his father sighed. This place won't do. He talked about how other relatives had bigger weddings and how having a smaller one would be embarrassing, clearly wanting to show off. Then, he turned to mother-in-law and said, Hey, bring that over here. Upon being asked, she returned with the brochure. She had a somewhat downcast look on her face. He took it and showed it to us. This place would be great. It's the most famous venue around here, really adds prestige. he said, apparently not noticing our shocked expressions. My acquaintance works here, and they've already reserved the reception hall and plan for us, he continued. Tom immediately objected. Hold on, what do you mean a setup? We don't want to have our wedding here. It has to be a place like this. Here's the venue and the plan. He insisted, showing us a brochure of a very formal venue, completely different from what we envisioned. It was so large, we wondered how many guests we'd need to fill it. We didn't plan to invite more than 50 people, but this venue would require double that number. Moreover, the plan he brought up included an outdated gondola show. A gondola, really? That's not what we want. About this plan, Father. Oh, this? Gondolas and smoke were the symbols of weddings in our time. They're essential. In stark contrast to him, who was brimming with confidence, Tom and I were completely disheartened. We exchanged glances, both just sighing in frustration. Anyway, it's our wedding. We'll decide on the venue and the plan. Plus, a place this big will cost way more, Tom argued. Don't worry about the cost. I've asked my acquaintance, so it's cheaper. You should be grateful for my connections. Father-in-law said proudly. However, the nature of this distant contact was unclear. Relying on such a weak connection for a discount probably wouldn't make much difference in the end. It might be cheaper, but it's still more than double what we planned. We're not inviting that many guests. It's not feasible, Tom stated. This seemed to strike a nerve with his dad. How many guests are you planning to invite? Can't you even fill a venue like this? He exclaimed. When he heard the number of our guests, he became even angrier. Such a small number would barely cover the relatives. No way, we don't have that many relatives. Tom said with an exasperated look. But it seemed like father-in-law was planning to invite nearly strangers in the name of relatives. Forget it, this discussion is pointless. This is one thing I won't budge on. No matter what you say, if you're going to keep this up, Dad, you don't have to come to the wedding. When Tom said that, even his dad finally quieted down. Mother-in-law, who had been silent until then, also joined in to support us. Honey, let the kids do what they want. Times have changed since our days, she said. Finally, his dad backed down. After that, our wedding preparations went smoothly. Choosing the wedding dress and planning the event was fun. We almost finished the guest list, settling on around 40 people. We decided on just one outfit change. It might seem minimal, but we found a dress we loved, and that was enough. We allocated the extra budget to the food. With most of the details set, we went to report to Tom's parents. Tom, fearing his dad might object again, said I didn't have to go, but I thought it's better to inform them in advance to avoid further issues. As expected, father-in-law had only complaints. Just one outfit change. I expected at least 3. And the guest list needs to be doubled. We can increase it just with our relatives. Before we could object, he proudly announced. By the way, Ethan will be coming. Ethan? Tom and I were puzzled. You know, the city councilman, Ethan. What? Why? It's an honor. I asked him through my connections. Wait a minute, we don't have any connection to someone like that. The conversation between Tom and his father continued, but suddenly turned to me. So, Sarah, who are you inviting? Surely, you'll invite at least one councilman, right? A councilman. That's a bit. Father-in-law visibly became irate. What do you mean? A bride who can't even invite a councilman to the reception is out of the question. I had almost lost my patience multiple times, wanting to remind him that our wedding wasn't a stage for his vanity. But his last comment pushed me over the edge. All right, I'll invite someone of a different status then. Tom also seemed to have had enough, and without saying anything more, we left the house. 3 months later, on our long-awaited wedding day. While I was waiting in the dressing room, I heard a commotion coming from the groom's dressing room. But, having expected this, I decided to ignore it. The ceremony went on without any issues and was over in no time. Father-in-law looked disgruntled, but it was a situation of his own making. The next day, as Tom and I were spending time in our new home, his father, predictably, came over. When his mother accompanied him into the room, he instantly became furious, like a kettle boiling over. What was with the guest list yesterday? I couldn't help but smile inwardly at the predictable scene. You're the one who said to invite a councilman, Tom retorted, and his dad started to falter. I had no idea a former minister would come. That's why I told you I would invite someone of a different status. You're not supposed to show up the groom. Because of you, my reputation for inviting the city councilman has been tarnished. I shook my head when Tom tried to intercede. Then you shouldn't have said such things in the first place. It's not my fault if your reputation suffers. I didn't have any other acquaintances to invite. Once I started, I couldn't stop. You thought I couldn't invite someone more important than the people you invited, right? Were you planning to say I wasn't a suitable bride? I didn't mean it like that. He visibly shrank. Then what did you mean? Let me guess, you just wanted to show off at your son's wedding that you know a councilman, right? He had nothing to say in response, just glaring at me. That man is my best friend's father, and we've been close for years. He was happy when he heard about our marriage, but said he didn't want to bother and declined to attend. But when I told him what you said, he happily agreed to come. Father-in-law was left speechless. Tom came to my support. Dad, you always show off too much. Think about the trouble it causes us. Using your own son's wedding as a tool for your vanity is just too much. Then, suddenly, mother-in-law, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Now that Tom's wedding is over, I want a divorce. What are you saying? Not just his father, but everyone present was shocked. I've been patient until now, but I've reached my limit. Yesterday's wedding was wonderful. During my own wedding, everything was decided by you and your parents. I couldn't even wear the dress I wanted. I still remember it. I'm glad Tom and Sarah could have a wedding without regrets. Hearing this story for the first time, I couldn't hide my surprise. Anyway, we're going home now. Mother-in-law, who always supported her husband, had changed and took him back home with her. Afterward, father-in-law was indeed divorced, and he, having never lived alone or managed household chores, was struggling even with tasks like taking out the trash. The man who had always put on airs, now known to be divorced, was pitied by those around him. Tom's mother, having gathered evidence of long-term emotional abuse, received alimony and became much brighter in her demeanor. Life with Tom as newlyweds was going well, and I was very happy. It was just a coincidence that my best friend's father was a former minister, but it helped us break away from the vain father-in-law.